Hello, Year 8. We're doing more equations again, but this time we're actually looking at quadratic equations. All of the equations that we've done up to this point have been linear equations, which means they've just been normal x terms, and we've just been able to move things away to get the pronumeral by itself. But a quadratic means that we have all these little powers of 2 on our x's. Now, let me give you an example here. If I had a -4 and I was to square that number, what would I get? Well, let's grab the little calculator out here. We want the brackets and we want -4 and we want to square it. We get a +16. What about if I have a +4 and I square that? Well, that is also going to give me, here it is, a +16. Okay, so what we're actually doing is we're going in reverse. I am going to be saying that something squared is equal to 81, and I want to go back and find out what that x would have been, which would have been the +4 or the -4. Now you may also think of this like in Pythagoras' theorem when you were doing things like c squared equals a squared plus b squared. And you'd sub some numbers in and you'd probably come down to something that said c squared equals, let's say, 81. Okay? And we learnt that if I want to get rid of the squared, then the opposite of squaring something is to square root the other side. Okay, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to be square rooting the other side. But combining these two things that I've talked about here, we're going to square root the number, but it could have been a positive or a negative number that would have given that answer. Okay, that might sound a little bit confusing. Let me just start in the example here and hopefully it will all make sense. So for this example number 1, we have x squared is equal to 81. If I want to get rid of that squared there, the opposite of squaring something is that I want to square root the other side. I want to square root the 81. But it needs to be a positive or a negative 81. Now on the calculator, you can actually type in square root of 81, and you will get that that is equal to 9. So that is a positive or a negative 9 that could have been the value for x. Now we write the little plus and minus together like that. It's just a shortcut to writing it. What it really means is that it could have been a positive 9 or it could have been a negative 9. And if you think about it, if you think back to this, what I was talking about over here again, if I was to put 9 back into here for x, into x squared there, it would be 9 squared. 9 squared equals 81. But also, if I put the -9 into there, -9 squared, minus and a minus times together makes a positive, and we also get a +81. So in each of these equations, you are going to get two solutions. You're going to have a positive solution and a negative solution. You must remember to write both. So let's go on to example number 2. If I want to get rid of the squared here, the opposite thing of squaring something is to square root the other side, and we put the little plus or minus in front. The square root of 144 is 12, so that means x is equal to a positive or negative 12. Okay, it's okay to leave the two solutions together like this. You don't have to write them separately like that one over there, okay? Example 3. Now, it does say up the top here, I didn't read this out before, solve the following quadratic equations to 2 decimal places where necessary. Not all the solutions are going to work out nicely, and example 3 is one of those. If I want to get rid of the squared, I'm going to have plus or minus the square root of the 23. Now when I get my calculator and I type square root of 23, it doesn't come out as a nice number. So we're going to round this to 2 decimal places. Now the 2 decimal places would be the 7 and the 9, but there is a 5 after that 9. Okay, we want to chop it off, but we have to round it up. So the 5 rounds the 9 up, but because it's a 9, it actually has to round up the 7 to become an 8. So it's going to become 4.80. So it's plus or minus 4.80, correct to 2 decimal places. Let's try example 4. To get rid of the squared, I will have plus or minus the square root of the 59. On the calculator, if I square root 59, I get that decimal. So again, 2 decimal places would be 7.68, but this time the next number is a 1, so it's just going to chop off there. So 7.68 will be the answer, plus or minus 7.68. Example 5. If I want to get rid of the squared, I must square root the number on the other side, the square root of negative 3. Now, when you try to type that in your calculator, you're going to get a math error message because you cannot actually square root a negative number. So whenever you have a negative in here, you're not going to be able to get a solution. We simply say for this type of equation that there is no solution. Okay, we can't square root negative 3. There is no solution. So look out for those ones. Example 6. X squared is equal to 0. To get the x by itself, I'm going to have plus or minus the square root of 0. Now the square root of 0 is still 0. Now, can I have a positive and negative 0? No, 0 is just 0. It's not positive or negative, so we don't actually need the positive plus or minus sign. We're just going to say x is equal to 0. Example 7 and 8. We're stepping it up a bit here. We have got some numbers that we need to move away before we can solve the quadratic part of this equation. So what I mean by that is that I've got a 2 in front of my x squared and I've got a plus 1 here. Okay, I need to move them away. So the first one that needs to go is that 1. To move it, I need to subtract 1 to doing the opposite. Cross those off. That leaves the 2x squared and 9 take away 1, which is 8. Now I need to get rid of the 2. Now that's times with the x squared, so I need to divide by 2. Cancel that one off. X squared is now by itself. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Finally, because my x squared is now by itself, I want to get rid of the squared part, which means I need to square root the 4 and have the plus or minus at the front. Now the square root of 4 does work out to be a nice one. The square root of 4 is 2, so my answer is x equals plus or minus 2. Example 8. Again, there are some numbers that I need to move away here. I have a 38 minus 2x squared. Now, the x squared has been multiplied by the 2 first, and then the 38, we want 38 minus that. So the 38 was the last thing to happen. It has to go first. Now, it's a positive 38, so I'll need to subtract 38 to move it away. Oh, it's a bit wobbly, so cross that away. So I have negative 2x squared equals, now I've got some negative numbers happening here, so we need to be careful. We have negative 34, and we want to take away another 38, which is minus 72. Okay, now we want to get rid of the negative 2 in front of that x squared. It's times with the x squared, so I need to divide by negative 2. Cancel that off. X squared is by itself. Negative 72 divided by negative 2 makes a positive 36. Now, last thing is to get rid of the x the squared on that x. So that means we have to square root 36 with the plus or minus sign out the front. The square root of 36 is 6, so you can check that on your calculator. So our answer is x equals plus or minus 6.